really what drew me in, was the ability to freeze marbling and slip and colored slip in time on the surface of the mold. There's plenty of things that I I wish I didn't have to slip cast and make molds and could have make larger forms and more varied forms. Slipcasting is it's a beast when it comes to production.
So something I found interesting is that you are inspired by the randomness of patterns. How does this impact your work?
Yeah, I mean that's the really what hooked me. As I said, that's the basis of everything was, and again it goes to the science mind or background too, of like wanting to experiment with a process and material to figure out how to control it and manipulate it. And the inherent randomness of, snowflakes, geometries in nature have always captivated me, and how they're random yet controlled. And to try to recreate that in a process is what was the most fun for me. I mean, I still experiment, and I experiment with the material and how to make new designs and different forms. And the most fun part for me is when I don't know exactly what I'm going to get. My wave design was the very first reproducible design. It was just cobalt and white, and it's kind of a wave that swoops across the cup. And I've been making that for 10 years, and I still make it, and it's one of our main series. But I have things like where I'm working with a heat gun now, and I kind of create this film, and then I pour, and it creates a crackling effect. That's how I make the auroras that are kind of the most fun for me right now. And it's still a lot of randomness involved. And yeah, I mean, just the control of the process, yet the randomness that is involved every time is the most fun part. So
That is really cool. So, can you give me a simplified explanation on how you add the color and the randomness into your pottery?
yeah, so the basis of the process again is slipcasting. So I throw all my original forms, I make my molds, everything's from scratch. And then for people that, know about slipcasting, it's liquid clay that's being poured into that mold. So really that the basis of slipcasting has been around for 1,000 years. But really what I've developed from scratch is the application of the slip to the wall of the mold, and the ability to make layers of different pores. So the basis, I guess I should say, is a lot of the times I work from a container that I put white slip into, and then I'll lay colors on top of that, and I pour some of that into the mold in different ways, and then pick up the mold and manipulate the mold in different ways, adding things before and after. Again, it's a lot easier when you're actually looking at the work to show, okay, I poured here and then I picked the mold up and I made this wave. But again, whatever hits the surface of the mold is the design that you're going to see when that thing pops out. So 9 years in, still playing with different ways of pouring and manipulating. So a lot of possibilities.
So, what is it that drew you to slip casting?
You know, there's definitely a technical side of mold making that drew me in some respect, but then really, I mean, I wish I could make thrown forms and then pour onto them and make designs. I miss throwing, but really the process that I use and how the slip sticks to the mold, and then you're creating a design on the exterior of the piece once it comes out. It's not possible to do any other way. So that was really what drew me in, was the ability to freeze marbling and slip and colored slip in time on the surface of the mold. There's plenty of things that I I wish I didn't have to slip cast and make molds, and could have make larger forms and more varied forms. Slipcasting is it's a beast when it comes to production. You need a lot of molds, and there's a lot of downsides. really, to slip casting. It's not just a magical thing that you get to make a ton of pieces like some people think. You need to have a ton of molds, which take up a lot of space and they're heavy. But yeah, the marbling process was is why I got stuck in slip casting.
So now I have another question about the actual like process. So when you add the white slip and then the colors, do you wait for it to dry and then you add the slip afterwards, or like how does that work?
It depends, I guess, is it depends on the process. It depends on, yeah, like the design process of whatever particular piece I'm making. Most of the time it dries on its own pretty fast. It is tricky to make sure that you're using up all the slip that you've put in the mold. If you're needing to fill it with white, you would be contaminating all of that slip if you don't use up what you have in there. Yeah, I guess for the most part, the design that you pour is a paper thin layer because it moves behind, and you're just getting that layer and to show on the outside as the design. But most of the time, yeah, you kind of have to use it up, and it dries in seconds in a paper thin layer. But you want to make sure that you don't have a pool of colored stuff that you then pour white into that you and pour back to contaminate everything.
So now, what is your best advice to for people that want to start getting into slip casting?
Best advice for slipcasters. Yeah, we teach workshops, and there's a whole this could be a whole podcast in itself of just talking about slipcasting and the pros and cons. For people that want to get into slipcasting, I guess the first question is why? Like, do you think it's going to make less work for yourself? I just feel like you need to, for someone who wants to get into slipcasting, if they are aware of the limitations and want to do it for, they can't throw, they have an injury or something like that, just understand how much how many molds you need, and that you're getting into an entirely different game. It's A studio is forever changed when you add plaster to it and you start creating space for all of your molds and your liquid clay. And I mean, if you just want to do it a little bit on the side, it's simple. Making It's hard to find good molds also. I mean, do you want to make something that is really your own and make your own mold? Then for if you want to get into slip casting, the first step is learning to make molds and mold make, which is again just an entirely different game and even art form, and it's a lot more technical. People get When we teach workshops, people get a little freaked out the first day. It's a lot more technical than people are used to in ceramics with mold making.